It's the final instalment of Fundamentals February, but this week is so important you finish the box set off, because we're going to help you understand the type of investor you are, and just as importantly, what you can do with that knowledge.
Yes, thank you for joining us on the Property Podcast, where every Thursday morning property investors come together to be informed and inspired. This is episode 311, where it's all about you. We've talked about a lot of the big economic concepts that underpin property, but you're a big part of it as well. What do you want, and how should you go about getting it? They sound like simple questions, but when you start thinking about them a bit, it can be a little bit more complicated than you first thought. But don't worry, because today, that is what we're going to help you with.
So our new story of the week, Rob, is enthusiastic property presenter talks Brexit. And no, it's not a podcast presenter, it's a TV presenter.
Yep, this is TV's Phil Spencer, as reported in The Express, saying something that will be quite familiar to property podcast listeners by this point, which is that the main impact of Brexit has already happened. So you'll read so many headlines about the terrible things that Brexit is going to do to the property market, which are mainly based off misunderstood or out of context comments based on something that somebody from the Bank of England said. But we've been saying for a while that we are seeing the impact right now, and Phil Spencer's saying the same thing. The fact that the market has slowed down so much, the fact that the volume of transactions is so low at the moment, means that whenever what happens, whatever it is, rather than being a disaster, it's actually likely to give the market a bit of a boost.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that the lovely Phil Spencer agrees too. You never know, Rob, he might be a secret property podcast listener. If you are, Phil, get in touch. You can come on. We'll make sure you deliver biscuits for the show. Or, more likely, he's just seen what's happening in the market and it seems really obvious to him as well. I think it's worth bringing this news story back up because still now so many people are asking me, what's going to happen after Brexit? And I feel like we've talked about it a lot. Well, not a lot because it's already priced in. But still, the amount of questions that I'm getting around Brexit is phenomenal, probably more than any other topic. And I do get it because it's all the media is feeding us right now, and it will impact our country dramatically one way or another. But as far as property is concerned, I think the impact will be less dramatic. But in a few months, we'll see.
So before we get into our main topic this week on Fundamentals February, an important reminder that meetups are back. Property Hub meetups have had a couple of months off while we give them a bit of a reboot, but they're back and trust me, it'll be well worth waiting for. We've got new upgraded venues and we've got a new format. So there's still going to be no selling, no teaching, none of that stuff. It's going to be nice and casual and informal, but we've put a new format in place and limited the number of attendees, which will make it far more likely that you'll meet the people who you want to meet and have the conversations that are going to make this a valuable night for you.
So like we mentioned last week, it's £5 to get involved. Not a lot of money, but the reason why we do it is so we can have those better venues and make sure that everyone who turns up is seriously committed to the process. So it makes it a better event all round. You can find out a list of our locations and venues by going to propertyhub.net/events. A couple have already fully booked, so they're done. So get in for the following month if that's an area that you're keen to get involved in. And also, when you go and look, you'll see a number of areas that we're in. We're going to be rolling out to different areas and regions in the future. So if you can't find one close to you right now, check back in a few months' time because more are on the way.
All right, it's the final part of Fundamentals February. What a great month it's been. We've had loads of fantastic feedback about these episodes, so thank you. We've really enjoyed recording them because it's so good to go back to the basics. And as you've probably heard if you've listened to a couple of the episodes, we've been getting quite excited and carried away, going back and talking about these big ideas again. So if you haven't listened to the other episodes in this series yet, do go back and do so. But today we're talking about another really important fundamental concept, which is you. Which type of property investor are you? And we've become really aware of what an important topic this is because we get lots of questions in through different channels, including for Ask Rob and Rob. And when we get those questions, they're often about what kind of strategy someone should use or what sort of property they should buy. And we find them sometimes impossible to answer because the person asking the question doesn't mention what they're trying to achieve. And that is the absolute key to why you're doing this in the first place. Hardly anyone thinks about this in enough detail before they start. To be honest, we didn't. And that's because the information wasn't out there. But now you have the chance to learn from our mistakes and the mistakes of others and do things differently. Because without thinking about what you're trying to achieve and who you are, then you're completely leaving it up to chance as to whether you'll end up where you want to go. And Rob, when we're talking about where you want to go, what we're really talking about here is goals.
Goals are so important. We've talked about them on the podcast before, but for very good reason. Goals will help you make better decisions. when you're going through your journey, but just as importantly, at the beginning of your journey as well. Getting started in property investment can be so intimidating, but knowing exactly where you want to get to will help you plan out those first steps and allow you to get going. Goals will also help you avoid distraction, because lots of shiny, interesting things come along in property, but when you look back at your goals, you can say, right, well, will this help me get any closer to my goal? So you become more effective as a property investor as well. And property can be tough. It's not all fun and games. You're going to have times when it's not going your way. So by having a goal, it's going to keep you motivated to stay on track and to keep pushing on. Now, not all goals are created equal. Now, when you set a goal, you have to make sure that your goal is SMART. It's an acronym. It's SMART, and it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. And you have to make sure any goal you set ticks each one of those boxes. Just saying, I want to get rich through property, isn't a goal. Well, it is, but it's just a really poor one. So get very clear and make sure any goal you set is a SMART goal. Now, when you set your goal, make sure it's meaningful, because your why is just as important. By saying, oh, I want to get a Ferrari, because you think, oh, well, I need to say something, but you're not even that into cars, isn't a great goal. Because when it does get tough, as I've touched on, you're not going to be as motivated to push on through. So you've really got to make sure that your why, the reason behind this, is something that you are passionate about. It may be looking after future generations. It may be looking after your own financial future, but it's got to be important to you. And what's important to some people isn't important to the next person. So don't ask other people, why should I do this? You've really got to think about who you are and what's important to you to make sure that your goal is meaningful.
Now, we've spoken to a lot of property investors and we've heard a lot of goals. And yes, you are a unique and magical snowflake, but these goals do tend to cluster into different types of investor. This is something that we've spotted over time, and knowing which type of investor you are gives you not a template to follow, but it counts certain things in and certain things out, and it gives you certain considerations that you should be thinking about. It's also important for us to know we're in the business of helping property investors achieve whatever they want to achieve. So as soon as you arrive on our new website, we ask you a few questions to help you determine which type of investor you are, but also to tell us, and so we can direct you towards the most helpful resources. And from experience, we've discovered that defining investors in terms of what you want is so much more meaningful than by asking whether you want to invest in single lets or HMOs or do flips or refurbs. Those are sort of second or third level questions. The first level question is why? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Because property is something that you do for a reason. Apart from a few very isolated cases, it's not something that you just do by accident. There's normally some kind of motivation behind it. Once you know what it is that you want and you've spent time thinking about it, lots of other decisions will flow from there. But you've got to have that first step in place. So like I said, we've spoken to a lot of investors about their goals and helped them to set better goals. And from doing that, we've identified 4 main types of investor that most people will fall into.
So first of all, a warm welcome to long-term Lou. Now, long-term Lou sees property as a pension and something possibly to pass on to future generations. Now, long-term Lou, as you can probably guess, all about the long term. So they have a 10-year plus view when it comes to property and to them achieving their goals. No quick wins here. They tend to prioritise capital growth over yield because that's where the real money is made in property over the long term. Now, they will get a yield and they'll see that as a nice bonus rather than a must-have. They want assets that are going to put money in their pocket, but the capital growth is their main driver because that will help them hit those big goals such as a pension or looking after future generations. The great thing for long-term Lou is because time is on their side, they don't need to take big risks. Because over the long term, good, sensible, steady properties are going to perform as well as pretty much any other property. So you don't need to gamble with risky areas or risky property types or risky strategies to hit your goals. So long-term Lou finds it a lot easier to sleep at night as well. And often they'll be hands-off because their property portfolio is just something that's working away in the background as they get on with enjoying their life, and they'll take advantage of their wealth later on.
Now let's welcome our second type of property investor, and this is Income Ian. Now, Income Ian is focused on passive income, and this is something that's appealing to a lot of people who doesn't want passive income, money that just comes in without you having to actively do anything. Sounds great, and it is great. Everyone wants this to some extent, but for Income Ian, this is the main driver for getting involved in property. So Income Ian is looking to supplement his salary, maybe to replace it one day. It would be great to have enough passive income coming in that he's not going to have to turn up at the day job anymore and can be supported entirely by the portfolio. But this isn't something that he wants to achieve straight away. He doesn't hate his job so much that he just wants to get out of it right now. We'll meet a character like that a little bit later on, but he just wants that little bit more. Maybe it's because having an extra £300, £500, £1,000 a month coming in would allow him to have a better quality of life. Or maybe it's for a bit of diversification, so he's not completely reliant on the day job. Either way, it's all about that passive income. And for that reason, Income Ian will tend to prioritise yield over growth. Not necessarily, but to the extent that there's a trade-off, they'll normally come down on the yield side of the fence to get that income coming in right now. Now, that search for income might lead Income Ian towards strategies like HMOs that tend to create higher cash flow, but that's not necessarily the case. Things like HMOs can be popular with Income Ian, but they're not very passive. So because he's not in a huge rush to quit his day job, and he's still got a day job that's taking up a lot of his time, a more slow and steady approach of just gradually racking up the single lets over time can work very nicely. Again, it's not going to be life-changing overnight, but over the longer term, not necessarily as long as 10 years, maybe even just 2 or 3 years, having that extra income coming in can make a really big difference to Income Ian's life.
Okay, so next up, we've got Hands-On Hillary. No, she's not as touchy-feely as you think. She just loves getting stuck in to property. She loves property itself, and maybe not as a means to an end. Now, Hands-On Hillary may be good at building work or enjoy interior design, or may have not tried that before, but likes the thought of doing that type of stuff. Hands-On Hillary probably likes meeting tenants as well if she lets her properties out, and working directly with tradespeople. Now, Hands-On Hillary would probably love to do this full time, but at the very least would see it as a hobby. And making every decision to maximise income or long-term return isn't the priority. Of course, Hands-On Hillary wants to make some money, but the main driver is the love of the game and the love of property itself. Now, the type of strategies that would appeal to Hands-On Hillary are getting involved in flips and refurbs, absolutely, or possibly even self-managing a portfolio. So if Hands-On Hillary decides to keep some of the portfolio, definitely would be there, hands-on, meeting the tenants in person and building relationships up with them. Because of this, Hands-On Hillary will often stay local when it comes to her property activities because her strategy dictates that.
And finally, we've got Freedom Fred. Now, Freedom Fred hates his job. Or if he doesn't hate his job, he just hates the very notion of working for someone else. He wants to be free. He wants to be doing his own thing. Chances are he's intrinsically motivated by building something for himself, but there's often another motivation in there as well. Something like the ability to spend more time with his family, or having the flexibility to pursue a passion as well. There's normally something that he can't get out of having a regular job that he can only have if he manages to build a business for himself. So for Freedom Fred, there's this burning desire to make things happen quickly. For that reason, things like rent-to-rent and lease options might be appealing because they promise quick results even without having lots of cash to invest. So for Freedom Fred, the approach of just buying properties and sitting back and waiting for time to work its magic is not going to work. He needs results now, and he might not have the cash to match his ambitions. So any strategy that can get results quickly, even if it involves a lot of work, are okay with him. Fred might also be drawn to more time-intensive strategies like HMOs. HMOs can produce a higher income than most other types of investment, but they do take time and they often involve being hands-on. But that's completely okay with Freedom Fred. It's not that he doesn't want to do any work, he just wants to work on his own business. So he's doing it on his own schedule with flexibility and building up his own wealth, not somebody else's.
So start to think about what type of investor you are, because that will help you make better decisions. And once you know what type of investor you are, you can move on to the strategy that suits them. Now, some strategies map onto each investor type better than others. But you can't say, well, I'm this type of person, so I should do this, because it also comes down to time and money. You might want to do flips and refurbs, but if you're working 60 hours a week in a high-pressure job, it might not be practical. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule, but for the vast majority of people who are time poor, doing refurbs and flips is just out of the question. Or the thought of building a passive hands-off portfolio may be very appealing to you, by buying properties that are ready to rent. But if you've only got 20k and no prospect of saving much more, you're going to have to add value to make your cash work harder.
So the strategy is the second level. That's where you mix in the type of person you are with what you've got available to you in terms of time or money. But before you get to that level, you need to have an answer to that initial question. Which type of property investor are you? So if you're currently involved in property and you've been doing it for a while, then hopefully you'll know the answer to that question. But it's possible that you don't. It's possible that you have just been blindly going down one particular route because it's something that you've seen somebody else is doing and you've not thought about how that ties into your long-term goals. If so, then now is the time to change that. And if you're new to property, you like the idea of getting involved, but you haven't been able to start building your portfolio yet, then today is your lucky day because you have the opportunity to think about the answer to this very important question before you make any decisions. Now, property is great because you can use it in so many different ways to accomplish so many different purposes. The flexibility of property is one of the most appealing things about it, I think. Depending on your skills and your assets and your situation and your aspirations, you can find a way of making property work for you. But that's a problem too. If you don't take the time to get clear on these really fundamental questions, you can end up going down the wrong path because there are so many wrong paths that you could take. That doesn't mean that before you get started in property, you need to have a fancy business plan or have lots of spreadsheets. It just means that you need to spend some time reflecting on what matters most to you. And that's not an easy thing to do. For some people, it would actually be easier to do the business plan and the spreadsheets. Thinking deeply and honestly about what you actually want, and in doing so, being forced to narrow down your options often feels uncomfortable. It's not something that comes naturally to most people. But hopefully, after listening to this episode, you'll understand why this is something that's so worth doing. And once you know what type of investor you are, then you can move down to that next level of really developing your goals and putting in the action steps along the way that are going to get you to where you need to be. And to help you with that, we've got a course all about goal setting on Property Hub University. You'll find that at propertyhub.net/university.
Self-awareness is a topic that comes up more and more, and it seems like it's quite in vogue. Being self-aware is something that is important to successful people. But it doesn't have to be complex, as it sounds quite daunting. I need to be self-aware. But just by taking some time to reflect and think about the goals you want to achieve and the person you are and what's likely to sit well with you or not will make a huge difference to your property investment endeavours. And actually, it will make a huge difference to your life if you take it outside of property too. You can listen to these podcasts, enjoy them, wait for the next one, and just carry on. But this is one of those episodes that you really need to pause, stop, and think about your goals and the type of investor you are. Because once you nail them, my friend, your property experience and journey is going to be a far superior one. So it's that time of the week where we look at the reviews that are coming in and pick one out that really stands out for us. And this week from Elsie is a cracker. It really fits in with what we've been discussing. So here it goes. I'm 22 years old and I've been saving to get started in property investment since I was 19. My friend had told me about listening to podcasts years ago, but I never found them interesting until I found the Property Podcast after reading one of Rob Dix's books. I listen every day driving to and from work and the gym, and I've been worried about having the right amount of cash to get started ever since I started saving. But you guys have given me the confidence to just get it done and get stuck in. My partner, who's the same age, is already on his 4th property and I'm eager to catch up. Thank you so much for the education and the motivation to get me going. I will be purchasing my first property this year and I'm excited for the future as I've planned my goals around becoming a full-time property investor. Well done to you. Congratulations for getting your goals down, getting focused on what you want and giving yourself a time frame as well to achieve it. It's so easy to say, I want to become a property investor, but if you don't put a deadline on when you're going to become a property investor, it might never happen. So it's awesome to see, and thank you for the review.
That's nearly us done for another week, and it's the end of Fundamentals February. But before it's the end of the podcast, we've got to sneak in Hub Extra. It's where we give you that little bit more. We broaden it out from just property and give you something, whether it's a quote or a tool or a resource, that's going to make your life that little bit better. This week, we've got something that's not going to change your life, but it could remove a small point of irritation. Now, if you're anything like me, you watch a fair bit of Netflix. But if you're also like me, and maybe you're not as grumpy as I am, but I get really annoyed by it every time you go onto Netflix. First of all, it asks you who you are, even though it should already know. And then it starts playing all this mad stuff at you. And it's quite hard to find what you actually want because it's trying to promote its own stuff. Whenever you hover over anything, it does something weird. It's really cleverly engineered to get you to watch more and to watch what it wants you to watch. But that works for Netflix. But it doesn't mean it works for for you as someone watching. So I was very happy to find a little extension for the Chrome browser called Netflix Classic, which quite simply clears away all that clutter and puts it back to how it was before they got terrifyingly good at manipulating you and making you watch more and more. So all you need to do is install this little extension, say goodbye to all the clutter, spend a little bit less time watching stuff that you weren't planning to watch when you first went on there, and in general, make your Netflix time a little bit more chilled.
So that's it. That's Fundamentals February finished. If you missed any episodes of Fundamentals February, then go back and listen to them, because they are the pillars of a successful property investment career. If you understand, and I mean really understand, what we've discussed over the last few weeks, you've now got the platform to go on and achieve all your property goals and dreams. And of course, after today's episode, you'll know exactly what type of property investor you are. So let us know. Hit us up on our social channels, Property Hub UK, on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Drop us a message and tell us the type of investor you are. Or have you made up a new category and have you got a name to add to that list? Let us know. So we'll be back next Thursday with the Property Podcast. But before then, don't worry, we've got you covered with another Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday. So until those wonderful events occur, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.